Imagine trying to show love to another person, right? And it's coming from a place where you haven't fully, delved into the waters of understanding oneself. You can't give real love if you don't know who you are or what space and place you are giving it from. How? It's impossible, in the sense that if you don't authentically understand who you are, can you genuinely say that you're giving real love to yourself? And if you're not giving yourself real love, then how do you give it to another? And when I think of all these things in like totality in terms of the collective, one, it lends itself to why, myself and I'm sure some of you out there who kind of, subscribe to being more reclusive or only coming out when necessary, and only connecting when necessary, because like you could sense the collective, you could sense the energy, right? Like I was saying earlier, a lot of people don't know how energy works, and it shows. Because again, why would you want to be anything other than who you're supposed to be, right? Because if, with the notion of concept of love on one spectrum and fear on the opposite side, right? Being yourself, right, authentically, which side of the spectrum do you believe or perceive you veer more towards when you're your authentic self? Is it fear or love? When you're more authentic, you're less fearful. So it's further away from fear and closer to love. When you stand tall in your beliefs and you understand like the nature of your path and your journey, it's like that requires an unshakable, unwavering version of self, which requires a person to have to dig within. Like, I don't care where you go on this planet, the planet is but so big, you can't run out. And what happens when you've exceeded a limit of what could be seen, read, perceived? Now, that's virtually impossible. You can read forever. I'm sure there's enough literature to read forever. With the internet, that is amorphous. It has no construct and no shape. You can probably, is there a proverbial end to the internet? Or is it infinite? Probably not as infinite as like the ethers or, the constellations, etc. But there's plenty to read. There's plenty to be understood. But what happens when you reach a certain breaking point or a fork in the road with external things? The only other place to check is within. And that's the only place that, through working through those things that are unhealed, through connecting to the version of self that you wish to be, like depicting that and then pushing towards it, through creating boundaries for self, through creating boundaries for others, through discipline, through having fun. Like, F it, dance, you feel me? Dance around, like get your shimmy on, like enjoy. Like, who wants to walk around being upset all day because someone else has an energy that they don't necessarily wield? You know what I'm saying? Which means, like, yo, find your niche, find your area, find your auraverse or your universe. Auraverse is mine, so you can't have that. But find your auraverse. Find a thing that is your thing, and I promise, if you operate from that, you won't have to worry about what next man is doing. You won't have to worry about what next woman is doing. It's because you doing you. And which part of the spectrum does that lean towards? Fear or love? It's kind of like the Spike Lee movie, John. Like, Spike's one of my favorite directors. One of my favorite, like my top 5, 10 black directors. Hate versus love. You know what I'm saying? Hate, whooping ass, winning. But who comes back? Who comes back fighting when he appears that he or she appears that they're on the rope? Love. You understand what I'm saying? Love. And I think that's something that we all have to kind of assess for ourselves. Like, yo, in our daily interactions and at work, home, school, in our neighborhoods, it's like, yo, are the people around me, is it real love? Is it genuine? Because if you ask yourself that first question, then it's like, okay, If they're disingenuous, then are they transmitting or really showcasing real love? Or are they just appreciative of the fact that they are associated? Because that's entitlement. It's like, oh, I'm next to this person, or I'm next to this thing that has value, so I can somehow, derive some level of value for myself for being in association. And that's association, appreciation for association, which isn't real love. You know what I'm saying? It's like, okay, well, I could get this from this person, or this individual has this kind of star quality, or this individual has this amount of money, or everything that's an extension of that particular individual that's why the whole monk mode or the reclusive, because like, where's the real love? I can't really say that I've ever known that. It's isolated incidences, and with specific individuals that I know are like ordained to be like in my space at a particular point in time. But for the most part, it's been a lot of the fraudulent, the fake and the fraud, and thus you end up in the Auraverse. You know what I'm saying? You'd be surprised how many folks be like, damn, yo, like, that was a real nigga. Like, I never connected with somebody in your energy field. I never, you know what I'm saying? And then you'd be surprised, quadruple that to infinity, and that's the amount of people who will never, ever tell you, like, yo, just communicating with you, just corresponding with you, has kind of opened up the, the gates of my mental, or the synapses of my cognitive, to allow me to, operate in a higher version of myself than I did previously. People don't tell you that, but that's irrelevant, because you don't do those things for that. You do them because you want to operate on the side of the continuum. That's real love, right? And I think when you understand those from an energy standpoint, and how operating from that stance could, yield a much more fruitful and abundant life, it's like that's shouldn't that ultimately be the goal? You know what I mean? Like, to show real love, to do the work, to, find what it is that is your thing, and to love it without boundary. To love something from an authentic place, even if it's not a person, even if it's a memory of a place or an experience. Because I think when you find that love within, then it has no other choice but to manifest into a person. So that shouldn't even be the focus. I feel like the way, with this whole kind of conversation about, relationships, and, the nuclear family and black and brown families, particularly black families, and divorce rate, is like, yo, ain't nobody keeping it a band with themselves. Ain't nobody keeping it real, because ain't nobody, like, there's a select few of people who are genuinely operating from a certain place of authenticity. It's people getting married for the appreciation of the association more than your real love.